Harry, kill a fool, kill a fool. This is issue 3 on the MIC. Deadly goes the catastrophe. This is the way we crash the party. This one has the best cover of the series, I reckon. Kill a fool has done killed a fool, and he is leaving his calling card. Great imagery makes a great cover. This is part 3 of our 10-part story. We're picking up where we finished issue 2 with our lead character, Defense, having murdered his first victims, some muggers who attempted to rob him. This is entitled Thrill of the Kill, and our saga is by Steve Gerber. If you've missed issues 1 and 2, to briefly explain here, this is an oddity that exists. A 10-issue maxi-series from 1990 and 1991 that stars a relatively minor Steve Gerber creation. This deconstructs the idea of an anti-hero just before the industry truly descended into the anti-hero craze. Before we begin, this is brilliant. I want to say that near the start of every video on this because you really should give it a read rather than listen to a man be an idiot and try and handle an underrated masterpiece. Here is Summit, straight off the bat. This stood out to me. We have some quite honest and insightful writing probing into a man's internal response to having murdered for the first time. We don't get it often in comics. This level of quite reasonable and almost real feeling characterization. We do always get the person being sick, but all the stuff that follows that feels unique. Defense is handed more and more almost comical bad luck. He cannot afford his bills. And now he is juggling that and his day job with his secret that he has killed people and he is considering killing again. Judge Dredd. I forgot to mention him in one of these. I spent an entire video talking about all the things that maybe inspired Steve Gerber. And I don't know if Steve Gerber ever read any Judge Dredd, but the idea of the character alone definitely had to have been in consideration. I'm not very good with ever remembering comics, no matter how big or influential, outside of my very narrow Marvel and DC interests. Having name-dropped Judge Dredd, you might be getting excited, thinking that someone might be appearing in this video. We'll talk about him in a few pages. Defense is working at Burger King, and I almost wish we got a bit more of this because it feels too much like the surrounding characters are only there to facilitate Defense, offering bitter, sarcastic responses or to provide him with further financial problems. They would seem to treat him with respect, and one even offers him charity, and the way they are characterised, it muddies up the isolation and the suffering of Defense. He arguably has friends here. We have some black drug dealers and Defense, again, by sheer coincidence, walks into a bit of street crime. The idea is that there is so much crime on the streets that you cannot walk down the street without encountering some of it. Most of you are wondering, where is Raging 15-year-old, my comedy sidekick? We need him to provide his opinion. I have decided to protect this series from him. If you don't know, he is based on a real person, an actual YouTuber, maybe the worst YouTuber ever. And this scene here, I have yet to even incorporate his ridiculously racist views on black people. I don't want to cheapen this great story. He would not get any meaning behind it. He would think the bits where black people are shot dead are great, but that the comic is woke because he wears a gay costume and his gun doesn't shoot bullets. The little shit is genuinely pro-fascist. And he doesn't understand a comic beyond if he can hate it for being woke and gay. I hate him. And the only way I could deal with that hate was by doing what I often do, which is using that hate to inspire me. Or to just rip it off for a cheap running gag. Defense puts on the costume here. The hard Killer Fool costume. Killer Fool had an entry in the Master Edition Andy book, and his profile is very fucking unusual because, well, it is in one of the final issues of the series, so it came out quite a bit after the conclusion of this series. Defense is not listed as the third Killer Fool. We list this story under the bibliography, and in that we acknowledge Defense as the third Killer Fool, as well as over in Allies as an ally to the second Killer Fool, but those are his only mentions. I suspect they might have planned for a separate profile for him, but we never got one, and they had to know he wasn't getting one at that point, so it's very odd they couldn't just crunch down some of his info into the relevant data parts. Defense wears the traditional costume here, but he discards it, and I remembered that he wore it briefly, but what surprised me was he wears it for all of this issue. Here he murders black people in the alleyway, and his killing spree continues with him murdering criminals on the subway. Now, you might again be thinking of the It movie Joker, not its sequel, Joker 2, which was not a It, but the It movie Joker, wherein we have a very, very similar slaying. This is obviously directly inspired by Bernie Getz, co-star of We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel. This next one is the most gruesome. He incinerates a would-be rapist. Raging 15-year-old would despise, defends, quipping about having a threesome. He would say that it's gay and emo. Defends his descent is chronicled very well. You would think by this point, especially since what we just had was in essence a montage of him playfully murdering people, You would think he had gotten over his doubts, but he still sickened and literally feeling sick about murdering people. Then we see him start to bask in the notoriety as the news covers his crimes. Then he has his power cut off for not paying his bills. That's a kick in the dick, isn't it? I do find, again, the co-worker stuff is a bit undeveloped. One of them, the one he saved in issue 1, has practically been thrown herself at him. A thinly written fuck stump that is into a psycho killer for no reason. What is this? The sequel to the It movie Joker? The not It movie Joker 2? My beef, now there is a fucking pun, he is cooking beef. My beef is if you have a woman willing to shag you, you're not really down on your luck. On the topic of the It movie Joker, a movie that doesn't deserve the sheer volume of mentions it gets in these Killer Fool videos, we have Arthur Fleck, the institutionalised Killer Fool. We have him being questioned by his psychiatrists as to if he has any involvement in this new serial killer. He does, but he hides it well. Great scene. As I've said, he is the real star of this series. Defense is our protagonist, but the story is about Killer Fool and Killer Fool's influence. We end with Defense confronting the big bad drug dealer. But this time, he is unprepared for any retaliation. He is beaten by the drug dealer's crew, and then he is thrown out of a window. What a brilliant little series this is. A deranged rejection of society by Steve Gerber. I pity the fool who don't give this 7 thumbs up.